On August 13th, 2013, Payday 2 was released on PC, PS3, and Xbox 360. Payday 2 sought to improve on the core gameplay of the original game while increasing the amount of content from more heists, more characters, more weapons, and more customization, including a much improved stealth system. Payday 2 was far more successful than its predecessor. This was the first game that Overkill had sold at retail, and demand for the game was so high that there were shortages with retailers, and publisher 505 Games needed to produce more in order to match the demand. I actually experienced this firsthand. I had pre-ordered the collector's edition for Payday 2 on Xbox 360 and wasn't able to play the game until a week after its initial release. If you want to check out an unboxing of the collector's edition, I'll have it linked below. And this demand translated into strong sales numbers for the game. During its final week before launch, 505 had announced that the game was profitable from its pre-orders, and as of 2014, both the original game and Payday 2 had sold over 9 million units. And according to Steam Spy, the current estimated figure for Payday 2 on Steam falls between 10 and 20 million. Granted, that's a pretty big gap, but unsurprising factoring in all the other platforms that the game is available on now. Over the years, the game was released on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and even Nintendo Switch. Xbox and PS4 consoles each receiving multiple versions, which included content patches and DLC that were released more regularly on PC. All of this increased success had to come from something. For the most part, Payday 2 uses the same core gameplay as a base, a co-op FPS fighting against endless waves of police units while pulling off a variety of different heists. Each area of the gameplay received an overhaul. Gunplay was more fluid, tight, and responsive. The game engine was improved in slight ways to make the experience run smoother than the original. Little gameplay tweaks like being able to look around while interacting with objects and being able to shout at enemies and teammates redefined how players could communicate and how they could interact with the environment. Heists were as creative as ever, featuring nightclubs, drug deals gone wrong, jewelry stores, arms trading, and of course bank jobs making a return. But perhaps the coolest addition to the levels themselves were randomized geometry. That is to say, now physical rooms in a building can change location each time you play. Perhaps a camera room is positioned right next to a ground floor entrance for easy access on one playthrough, and on the next it could appear in a far-off wing on the second floor. Stealth mechanics were vastly improved over the original. Enemies now give indicators based on your visibility, and new skills were implemented that allowed you to take advantage of key moments during the job in order to keep yourself from being discovered, like telling officers to handcuff themselves, responding to pager systems, or bagging and transporting corpses so that they wouldn't be discovered by other guards. While the stealth gameplay is still quite challenging, experience modifiers and extra cash would be rewarded to players who could pull off a job quietly and professionally. The loot mechanics were changed as well. Value of loot changed based on what difficulty the game is being played on. In the original Payday, there was only enough loot for each player to grab what they could hold and leave. In Payday 2, there is much more loot, which plays into a new mechanic, throwing. You can now pick up a bag and toss it a certain distance in front of you. If you coordinate well with your teammates, you can toss a bag from one person to another. You can use this to strategize by organizing a line of teammates that can daisy chain bag tosses, significantly decreasing the amount of transportation time that is required of moving 5, 10, sometimes 20 bags of loot to a getaway point. Speaking of getaways, there are now special escape missions. These can occur if you escape a certain day of a heist having met a certain requirement, like leaving during an assault wave. If you trigger an escape, you are loaded into a new level where you need to defend against the cops for a set amount of time until a new escape vehicle comes to rescue you. These missions are somewhat timed and require you to move all of your loot to the new escape as well. Customization was improved significantly. Masks are now fully customizable, no longer being tied to a specific series or aesthetic. Players could choose a certain type of mask, different color schemes, patterns, and materials to apply to their mask to make it their own. It is always fun playing online and seeing the cool combinations people are able to create, and you constantly see new ones. Weapons themselves are customizable with a number of different attachments from different silencers, laser sights, stocks, magazines, rails, you name it. All of these attachments affect stats on the weapon like rate of fire, concealment, and damage. Many of the mask materials and weapon attachments were rewarded to the player via completing missions. Rewards would come in 3 forms: experience, cash, and cards. A player would select a random card from a choice of 3 at the end of a job, and they would be rewarded a number of items from weapon attachments, mask components, extra money, or extra XP. It is worth noting that at one point in the past, Overkill had announced that they would be adding in unlockable safes that could be opened with real money, basically a form of microtransactions. This led to some severe backlash from fans, and eventually, after some ownership rights regarding the IP were resolved, they announced that the safes would no longer require real money to be opened. Basically, there were microtransactions in the game at one point, but now there's no way to use real money to open safes. If you get a safe, you get to open it for free. Many of the safes come with bonuses like cosmetic skins for armor and weapons in the game. But back to the game. Experience would go towards leveling up, while money would go towards actually purchasing items for your character. It uses that sort of point system that was popular with games like Halo Reach and Call of Duty Black Ops, where you would unlock the ability to purchase certain items for your character to use. Some may find that annoying, but it feels rewarding and worth the effort to complete jobs when you are essentially getting 3 different types of payouts that all feed into one another. By leveling up, you would also gain skill points, which were used in the new and redesigned skill tree system. Characters now had better defined paths and skill trees that they could choose to specialize in, with perks that granted very useful equipment and abilities the further a person committed. Things like being able to drop more than one medic bag, being able to throw bags twice as far, the previously mentioned forcing guards to handcuff themselves, and even the ability to revive fallen teammates by shouting at them, and fixing a broken drill by punching it. Should you not like the perks you went with, you could reset your tree whenever you liked. Familiar enemies make a return like the Bulldozer, Cloaker, and Tasers, all aesthetically changed but acting roughly the same, along with the familiar cast of playable characters. And speaking of the characters, Overkill decided to expand on the story of the Payday universe with Payday 2. Now there were elements of live-action video that would play before certain jobs. Some of these elements were taken from a live-action web series that was produced in conjunction with the game, that featured the actors in their respective roles and served to introduce certain new characters to the players. Going forward, Overkill would produce live-action shorts to announce many of the future DLC packs. The story isn't told very clearly to players during the game, but it was there for people who are paying attention. But the DLC is where this game went crazy. This game has been supported with content packs for just about 5 years. Paid DLC and free content updates radically changed the game over the years. Bug fixes and fine-tuning were constantly occurring in each of these patches, but the game saw drastic redesigns to its perks and leveling systems. A number of new difficulty modes were included, making the game even more challenging and rewarding players with new riches and items. An infamy system was added into the game. Think of it as a system like prestiging in Call of Duty. It would reset you at level 0 for a large sum of in-game money, but you could continue to level up and earn items that were only available at higher infamy levels. New enemies were introduced like medic units that could revive and heal other enemies, making them harder to kill. New heists were regularly added with new and interesting themes. New banks, stores, shady deals, a casino, secret government bunkers, towns, safe houses, prison breaks, you name it. If there is a heist component to it, there's likely a version of it in a heist in Payday 2. And over time, they even added in all of the original heists from the first Payday, all improved and updated to utilize the new gameplay structure in Payday 2. New gameplay systems were added into the game over various DLCs. One such gameplay addition is pre-planning. We all know the scene from a heist movie where the crew gathers around and plans the meticulous details of their heist. Well, here you get to see a layout of the level, entrances and exits, and you are able to call on favors to choose certain elements that affect how the job plays out. Perhaps you want a bus to crash through a wall of a bank to give you a quicker escape route. Or maybe you want to secure a portable zipline that will make transporting loot easier. You can use money to buy additional items to assist you, like extra health, ammo, or keycards. And you can even physically draw on the map. No one uses this seriously, but it is a fun addition. Another new gameplay system they added was driving. There are a few heists released in which you can drive cars and motorcycles to make a grand getaway. Now, I won't beat around the bush, the driving isn't very good, but I love that they implemented it into the game, further expanding on the core gameplay and making new heists have new hooks and gimmicks to get you to branch out and play other missions. They added a slew of new playable characters with varied personalities and new weapons to further choose how you want to play. Continuing with the tradition set by the last game, Overkill loves referencing pop culture, and it gets even crazier in Payday 2. Many DLC packs had official tie-ins with popular movies, games, and entertainment. Scarface is a playable character with a heist set in Tony's mansion, a Reservoir Dogs heist that is technically played in reverse, a heist based on the 2015 Point Break adaptation, even a set of John Wick heists that adds John Wick as a playable character, and adds new gameplay features that allow you to earn Continental coins you can use to upgrade various things like the gang safe house. This went so far that you could even see Payday characters on posters in the background of John Wick Chapter 2. I mentioned the safe house. Even that saw a major expansion in the DLC. What started out at launch as a seedy underground bunker with a vault and a shooting range blew up into this massive gang hideout. You could load into the hideout and walk around its various floors and rooms. Each character got their own uniquely designed room, with little activities that you could partake in scattered around. You could interact with people, you could even go into the upgraded vault and see all of your money stacked up inside. The safe house could even be raided by SWAT teams, which you could take on in a wave-based survival mission. I could go on and on about all the things they added into the game. They really went all out with the DLC. In 2018, Overkill offered one final DLC update that was to act as the final patch. This patch added a new heist that revealed some new live-action cutscenes that added some degree of closure, as well as a cliffhanger for more to come. They also added a story mode to the game, which organized heists into a general chronological layout that could be played through. After the release of this final patch, development from Overkill shifted focus into finishing development on their Walking Dead title. Some things that Payday 2 doesn't really excel in is its graphical fidelity. Don't get me wrong, the game is an improvement over the original Payday, but the game still looks dated even during the window in which it was released back in 2013. The AI in the game doesn't always behave in a believable way. Enemies will be delayed in reacting to what you do, whether you move near them or shoot them. Sometimes they just walk into a room and let you shoot them until they die. Other times they are relentlessly aggressive. The AI overall is pretty dumb and could use some major improvements. This factors into the game's difficulty as well, which can feel wildly unbalanced to players who are not as familiar with the little quirks in the game. Over future patches, the friendly AI was upgraded a fair bit from when the game first launched, but it still isn't great even in this state. The netcode is another area of concern with Payday 2. Tiny improvements have been made over the years to remedy this, but many times players will become desynced, which creates a bunch of lag for everyone, along with certain events occurring differently in each person's game, which can fundamentally break multiplayer matches and cause jobs to end. Whenever new players join a job that is already in progress, the game has to pause everyone that is currently playing while the new player joins into the game, which is as irritating as it sounds. And hackers are also pretty prevalent online as well. Despite these issues with the game, Payday 2, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best, if not the best, heist-centered video game on the market. It is highly replayable, highly customizable, and the amount of content is basically unrivaled by any sort of similar game. I have bought the 360 version, the PS4 version, and the PC version, and as of recording I've sunk roughly 400 hours across all versions. Payday 2 features 64 heists. It's hard to argue with the amount of gameplay for a game that regularly gets discounted below $20 on Steam. Not to mention other ways to play, like adding mutators which change various aspects of the game, as well as other game modes like Holdout, a mode where you have to survive waves of hard enemies, or Crime Spree, a persistent mode which has players complete as many heists as they can while the difficulty continually ramps up. The rewards are much more plentiful for teams that can actually win consistently and over a long period of time. And the game has so many ways to play. Not only limited to console and PC, the Nintendo Switch version allows the game to be played anywhere. Although it's worth mentioning the performance and resolution is likely downgraded for the Switch's hardware limitations, but still being able to take the game on the road is a huge advantage. Capitalizing on the new VR trends, Overkill developed the free DLC for Payday 2 on PC in the form of VR functionality with both the Oculus Rift and HTC Vive VR headsets. With the DLC, most of the game is playable in VR. It isn't an experience like many other VR titles such as Batman Arkham VR or the Star Wars Battlefront X-Wing mission. One of the interesting bits about the VR DLC is that VR players are still able to play with non-VR players. Basically what this boils down to is another way to play and experience the same game. Seeing as I don't have a VR headset, I haven't been able to try Payday 2 in VR, but it looks like a fun alternative way to play the game. Also, I think it goes without saying, but some people may experience motion sickness while playing the game in VR mode. But Payday 2 can't be the end of the line. What's to come next in this franchise? Stay tuned to part 3 of this Payday miniseries to find out about the future of Payday on the horizon and beyond.